welcome to the Always Go Far podcast. I'm Patrick Farden and I am here with Emily Anger. Em's all the way over in Stockholm and she's a self-leadership coach and mentor. How you doing?
I'm doing so well. I have a bit of a cold and sniffles, so I do apologize in advance for any awkward sounds in between. But
yeah, hopefully there's not too many awkward sounds or anything like that. Like you're all the way over in the cold, so you're probably freezing your ass off, and I'm here in the sun, just kind of bracing it all in. No mean to brag or anything like that.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah, but we'll switch. 6 months time, we'll just alternate, and then I'll be jealous of your summer. You're a leadership coach, self-leadership coach. How do you describe self-leadership? Because everyone's probably got a 9-to-5 job, or you think of the army, you're leading a group of people. Where do you describe that self-leadership part?
I mean, I think leadership doesn't have a form. Anyone is a leader if they choose to be a leader. A leadership is a way of carrying yourself, whether it's to carry yourself through your own shit, whether it's to carry yourself in other, in a community, whether it's carrying yourself. Literally, how do you show up in a world, whether that's in solitude or with other people?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's one of those things. The thing that comes to mind is in a wartime or something like that, you've got to carry something with you. You got to carry another person, and this whole idea of having to carry someone else. Whereas when you really start about you've got to be able to carry yourself in the first place. How do you show up in the first place? Don't worry about anyone else just yet, but how is it that you show up? How do you present yourself in that way? And so yeah.
I mean, if I don't have strong legs, how am I going to expect myself to put you on the back and run? Yeah. So for me, and it's in a way, I don't like the whole thing about the best version. We can all strive to be the best version, but the best version will never exist. So we'll never be our best version, and that's a great thing and a heartbreaking thing at the same time. But it's just how it is. We'll never reach the peak.
Yeah. I'm a shocker, or I love the whole be the best version of yourself. How do you become better each day? And I think the idea of how do you create yourself or strengthen yourself up in such a way that becomes closer to who you probably are, which is probably a way of letting go of things. And it was really quite fascinating because just before we jumped on here, you were I feel I'm getting lighter. I feel I can almost float up into the sky. Almost going to the solar systems, the galaxy, the planets. Describe a little bit about what that's kind of going on for you.
I mean, I didn't quite put it that way, but I feel for me, where I'm at right now in my business and in my life, but I would say mostly in my business, I feel less heaviness in my action doing because I'm more intimate with who I am, first of all, and also who I am not. And I really think that the lightness comes from actually listening and removing some judgment, and also massive acceptance. So where I am at the moment, because I'm doing all of these things, and I think this is always going to be a work in progress, as we know, once you reach one level, there's another level, and then you continuously find things that you might have to work through. But in the process of where I'm at right now, I feel that things that I do are so aligned with what I'm trying to achieve and who I want to be and the message that I want to put out in the world, that it's coming out of me almost as if it's flowing through me. Whereas before, I wasn't as aligned with what I wanted and how I wanted to be, and potentially also had some incongruences in myself towards also what I was teaching. And therefore, things felt really heavy. It was a lot of resistance. I didn't feel motivation. Things just didn't quite click. And so that's really where I'm at, in difference from this year, from last year, where I just made a big decision of essentially changing my entire life. Like, that's what it feels like. I feel there was like a life before 2023 and there's a life after 2023.
Yeah, there is that like quote that's like, there's like the time when you like die once, or you're born, and the second time you're like reborn almost. And so I'm not sure if it's kind of that way for you. But I'd be kind of curious. Obviously, I think there's a lot of people that walk around like that just feel like incredibly heavy. Like, I know there's been times when I've been working or like not wanting to exercise or not wanting to do anything, like you spoke about, just not being motivated to do the things that you wanted to do. What was that kind of like for you before? Like, where did you feel the heaviness that like people might be able to relate to know that it's kind of possible to kind of get there?
I think this is where leadership comes in, though, because leadership is about doing the things you don't want to do. Leadership is about facing the fears you don't want to face. It's about going through the pain that you don't want to go. It's like doing the thing that you actually don't want to do. Like, that's really in essence what leadership is. It's about having a clear, like a bigger vision of who you are, which may be in the future of how you look at how you would like to be, and having the connection to that, and then basing a lot of your day-to-day decisions on being that person, like actually leading yourself to being that version of yourself. And again, it's not your best version, but it might be a better version than you are today. Like, oftentimes when we have to make hard things, we have to do it from a place of being better than we are. We have to like jump before we have to jump to the other side. And the only way we can do that is to be so focused on the person that we want to be, not the person that we are.
Yeah, I really like that. It's something that kind of resonates for me, is like it's almost like there's like the future version of yourself, or like the better version of self out in front of you that's kind of calling you forward, and that it's who you want to be, and they're driving you forward from the front. And so like the self leadership is almost putting a version of yourself out in front that's kind of helping you to move forward, and that's almost like the way of leading yourself into the path, as opposed to somebody in the back that like you're kind of being chased down by, that like you kind of hope they never quite catch up to you. Whereas when you kind of start to take more control of how you want to lead yourself, it then creates a way for you to move forward, which is really quite cool.
Yeah, but and this is something I talk about in one of my programs. It's also about like, how do I parent myself to do things? Because if you're looking at it, the person I am right now who don't want to eat my vegetables and I don't want to go to the gym, if I can see myself as that's me being my child, like I am the child, and there will be a part of me, like the parent inside of me, that actually creates a respectful structure for me to follow. You know what? You don't get to eat ice cream until after dinner. That's like a respectful structure. That's not saying you can't have it. And if you have it, you're a bad child, and you should feel ashamed. But it's kind of saying this is how we do it now. And I know that we just talked about David Goggins, and one of the things that he says, like, this is just how it is now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's like it has that same kind of methodology. It's kind of like you said, that self-respect, like the ability to respect what's going on. And like when I saw him, when was it, last week, it was all about understanding and like accepting that the pain or the uncomfortable thing that's kind of pulling you forward. I think that was easily like one of my biggest takeaways from that, is like you said, simple as like eating your veggies, is it's like it's a thing in front of you that you need to do, and it's uncomfortable. Like, who doesn't want bloody ice cream? Like, I could eat ice cream all day every day, but it's not the thing that will help lead you forward. And so it's finding that the balance to do the uncomfortable things in that moment to kind of drive you forward. Which is like a very dichotomous way to way people normally think and process things.
Yeah, but I think ultimately we have to create these like structures which we can just lean on, because these structures make it easy to do the thing, because we just don't give ourselves another option. If it is you're going to eat three times a day, well, make sure you eat 3 times a day. It doesn't matter if you eat at 7 or 8 a.m., but at least make sure you have the first meal. and so we can create these structures without having this ruthless, like restrictive, like confinement of what it means to do it, but rather living through like principles, right?
Do you want to explain that a little bit more? Like, because like people go into like these structures, and I don't imagine that you like got your hard hat on, like your hammer on, whole time like building these actual structures in your house that you kind of do like a CrossFit gym around. How do you kind of describe that structure and principle in kind of your model of the world?
Yeah, I mean, let's just go for the example of health, and this is the first thing I kind of teach in one of my programs, the self-care intensive. It is, I give them 5 principles for like taking care of their physical body. Self-care to me is more than just what we do to our body. It's also how we speak to ourselves and like a lot of other things like the inner work. But if we're going like, how do I take care of my body? Well, there are 5 things that I say, these are the principles which you want to implement into your life. And one being, you need to sleep. Like there's no way around it. You actually need to sleep. If you think that you're going to be okay on 5 hours, you're lying to yourself. And the detriment is going to happen later on when you have a heart attack because you've been just too chronically stressed. So that's like number 1 for me. Sleep is crucial. 2, you want to exercise, right? Ideally, you do some form of activity every day, but you don't need to train, especially if you train hard. You don't need to do that every day. So exercise still has to be there needs to be consistency in the week for you to get the benefits of that. And we can obviously talk about like the adaptations and like what, but it doesn't matter really. And I don't care which type of exercise that you do, just do something that is a little bit harder than what's comfortable. And you and I know like the benefits of like the cognition, like cognitive benefits of like resilience, like you can like handle stress in different ways. It's just the byproduct of that.
Yeah.
Number 3.
Exercise really, because it has that place of like teaching us that pain isn't a bad thing. Like it's the thing that teaches us it's a good thing to move forward, and you're not going to die. You're not going to go into an ambulance or something crazy like that.
No, exactly. And I think this is the big value of exercise is that, I mean, I can talk about exercise alone for like the benefits because I'm that big of an advocate. Like, but yeah, anyway, I'm like going to give the principles because otherwise my ADHD brain is going to like, we have to do a second one. So we got sleep, we got exercise, we got hydration. Like we need hydration for our body to actually work properly. Like 70% of our bodies are water. And so if you're dehydrated, again, your ability to have cognitive performance as well as physical performance is going to decline by even just like 1% of dehydration. So it's something that people don't necessarily feel thirsty. And I'm one of them. I still have to create ease in my day for me to drink more water. And that could be always having a bottle in front of me so it's visually in my field. It might be like whenever I'm in a conversation with someone and they drink something, I'm going to drink something. It might mean I'm going to make it taste better. So I put like a vitamin C fizzy thing in so that I drink more because it's easier to drink when it tastes something. So making it easy doesn't always mean like you don't have to chug it. Like there's no like, you don't need to go extreme into it needs to be 4 liters and like if it less. And like, it's not about beating yourself up for the things that you don't do, but it's about holding yourself up for a standard that you know is going to keep you at your best. The next 2 is about nutrition. And number 1 for me would be cut down as much processed food as you can, just due to the fact that it's energy dense, nutrient poor, causes oftentimes a lot of inflammation, and it just doesn't serve you. And the detriments to your health over time, if the majority of your consumption is whole food, like processed foods, like it's not going to be healthy. You're just not going to have a healthy body. Again, I say you don't have to cut out all the processed foods in the world. It's not about like demonizing it, but it's just about understanding.
It's like a basic rule for processed foods. Like, is there like a metric or something that you're like, easy to go, this is processed, this is not? Is it kind of like anything that's in a package, anything that comes from a restaurant? Like, how do you kind of describe that to make it easy?
Yeah, I mean, there are levels of processing, and obviously depending on the level of processing, the worse it's going to be. So if you go and you have some deep fried potato chips from McDonald's that they fried 3 times because it just went cold, like that's a massively processed version of potato.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then maybe you can go, okay, what about the crisps in the store? Well, that also is heavily processed because it will also be added fats and sugars and loads of additives oftentimes. But then even you doing your own potato chips or French fries in the oven, that is still a processing aspect, but you're now removing heavy fats, loads of additives, so you're doing it yourself. It's still processing potato because it's not in its natural form. But we also don't want to eat potato raw. Like we actually need to process the potato.
So it's kind of like there's like a big like factory line, and like, you know, you got a car that's got all these like components. So you just want to reduce that factory line to almost like 1 or 2 of those phases effectively.
Yeah, I mean, the more we can eat either raw or processed that we've done ourselves in the home, either by boiling, steaming, oven baking, like even frying, because we can ourselves decide the heat and the amount of oil, right? So that's like, for me, it's a good way of thinking about it. Like I can eat anything I want. It's always going to be healthier if I make the burger myself, if I make the fries myself, than if I go to McDonald's. It's always going to be healthier, even though it's the same thing.
Yeah. Very cool. And then lastly, number 5. Just to make sure we're all in time and we don't miss the last one.
So we have to eat more protein in this world. And I know there's this like dichotomy of like, oh, no, too much protein and there's too little protein, and team bodybuilding is all about protein, and then team longevity, they say don't eat it all. Like you can get by on lettuce alone and, you know, raw broccoli. And it's like there is, again, a gray zone for people's requirements and need, but protein itself is the most important macronutrient that we have. Protein comes from the word proteos in Greek, which means the first one, or the most important one. It's the only thing.
I love like Greek letters or like Latin letters, or like what are the foundation of these things, and you're like, oh, it sounds freaking cool when you figure out the origins of a word.
I mean, cool. I'm pretty sure I didn't say it in Greek, but like I said it in the English Greek version. But still, we cannot. There are some amino acids, which is what we break down proteins to. Like there are some amino acids we just cannot produce ourselves, and we actually are always remodeling ourselves. Every cell of us is actually dying, and we can produce new ones. We need amino acids to do that. So it's not just about muscle building, like our organs need it, our immune system need it, our hair, skin, nails need it, like our blood cells need it. Like there are so much that we need these amino acids for, that if you're under eating that over a very long time, you're going to be in a catabolic state, which means you're going to break down because you're just not getting it in from your diet. And that has a negative effect on your physiology long term.
Yeah, right. I think it's sometimes like for some people things get like super overcomplicated, and like there's 20 million different fitness people out there, 20 million different perspectives on like how you live and like how you function. And so when it becomes like really, really simple in terms of sleep, movement, hydration, you know, reduce the processing and protein, it just becomes like a really simple way of kind of picking and setting up that framework or formula that as you go about your day, you kind of do. And it allows you to pick the activities and how you do things and create a habit, or be able to instill an easier habit, because sometimes it's like the idea of just getting out of bed for some people is massive. However, if you figure out how to then figure out to just drink water, to like, it's crazy how simple it is. Like, I don't drink enough water probably. And as soon as you said sleep, I was like, oh, my whoop's been telling me for the last couple of days, I need to sleep more. And I feel it. And so it's like finding that balance, I think, for yourself to slowly get yourself back on track to, you know, live into these frameworks.
Yeah. And again, like I totally appreciate that for some people, all of this is easier than for others, because if you're like a single person like myself, I don't have anyone else to worry about. I just make sure that I go to bed early. I just make sure that I cook my food. I just make sure that, you know, I schedule it into my diary, which is pretty flexible because I work for myself. So I totally appreciate that for some people, this is very much more easy. It doesn't make it easy because you still have to do it. And the problem is that the things that are important but not urgent, because none of this is urgent. I'm not dying. I'm not like, none of this is like affecting me right now. But because I don't like make it important, I need to make it important for me to actually make it happen. So really, again, it comes back to, do you have time not to? Do you have time not to do it? Because the longevity of you, it's determined right now. You cannot wait until 10 years when things start to decline and wish that you have done something sooner. So it's really about like the things that you do today matters for the next 10, 20 years. So we don't have time not to do it.
It's like that instant gratification thing. I think this seems to be something that keeps coming up for me, or at least is like, we really struggle in our generation to think ahead of where we're at in terms of like, we all want that instant fix, and we want something that happens instantaneously, and we can maybe offset something that we think like, it's not too bad now, without thinking about the future, because we're so focused on the now and in ourselves, whereas opposed to how does this thing that happens every single day, how's that going to affect us in 10, 20, 30, 50, maybe 100 years from now? Like we could be like 150 and still rocking it. Who knows where?
Well, you won't unless you live through these principles. That's the hard truth. Like the people that want to live a long time, they would have to live like this for a long time.
Yeah, it's a choice. It is a lifestyle. Like lifestyle isn't the right word, but it's like it's how you want to choose to live each day. And that if you do these things now, like that are really simple, they kind of affect you. And if you invest in them now, they help you moving forward.
And also, like looking at it this way, if I don't do this now, well, come when I'm maybe 60, imagine me being 60, living to like 95 in my generation, like over 100, like in my family. But imagine if I get like a chronic disease at 60, and then I'm going to live another 40 years not living, but I'm still going to be alive. So there's like the things that we do in principle is to make us be able to live this life, not just to be alive through this life. And I think it's a very massive distinction to make. And it should put the importance into the things that are not urgent. Yeah.
It's like to feel alive as opposed to just be living and be like alive, like to actually feel stuff and to be able to access what you're actually doing.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Well, I appreciate you jumping on and us having a chat. Like this has been epic, and I always love having a chat with you to understand what's going on and how to figure out what are the simple things that are happening for you. Where can people find you, or like, what's the cool things happening in your world at the moment?
Oh, wow. Well, I think
no spotlight or anything.
Best way to find me, I would say, is on Instagram, where it's just Emily Anger. That's where I would hang out the most.
Super simple, just like the 5 principles. Just keep it simple.
Keeping it simple, silly. Yes. And obviously I do have a lot of programs and things coming out this year in my community and everything, which I think if you find me on Instagram, you can find everything that I have available right now as well.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate that. Appreciate you jumping on. For everyone watching at home, go give Emily a follow and follow her stuff. She's really cool, as you know. Anyways, always go far, guys. See you on the next one.